Hey everybody, Dr. Eric Larson here from the Paradox Podcast, trying a new format, a new software here. So if you're watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, make sure you comment and tell me what's going on. I'm going to wait just a few minutes to let a few people on. We'll see if we get some viewers. Again, I've not used this format before, so we're going to talk about the virus, of course, and we all just need to take a deep breath. Probably myself more than anybody. We'll wait just a few more seconds and then I'll just get going because most people watch this on replay anyway. So I guess we'll get going and talk about this virus. And I don't know what's so complicated about this in some ways. If you've been watching this channel, listening to me since April, I don't claim to be any genius when it comes to this. I'm not an immunologist. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm a physician, but I'm an anesthesiologist. I just talk to lots of smarter people about this, whether they're infectious disease physicians or someone else. I mean, immunologists. I've talked to some epidemiologists as well to just try and better understand COVID, partly just for academic reasons, just interest, and it's just everywhere. And so it's a sort of academic interest. I think we all have sort of our theories. And so since last spring, it became very evident a few things about this virus. SARS-CoV-2, we're talking about, obviously, which caused COVID-19. Just a refresher, if you have SARS-CoV-2, you may be infected, you may be asymptomatic, in which case you don't have COVID-19, but you have had the virus that causes COVID-19 for others. But anyway, this coronavirus has been newly discovered end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And we said a few things at the beginning. One is that it will become endemic, which means it will always be with us. It is never going away. That was before when we were discussing, we even knew that animals could have it. There's obviously a concern once other mammals can get it, they can spread it as well. So like mice, mink, deer now, I mean, there are probably many other animals, primates as well, who can get SARS-CoV-2, pass it on. Either they get sick or they don't get sick, but they can pass it on to humans who can then get infected. So you don't necessarily have to have a human-to-human spread. You can have human to animal to human spread or whatever, or animal to human spread. Either way, it shows that this is going to be around us forever. It's never going to go away. It's never going to be eradicated. So I think we just have to first accept that. It's not going to be like polio. We can't wipe it out. It's not going to be like smallpox or rinderpest. It will be here with us forever. And so, yes, we do need to learn to live with it. And so let's just kind of look at the virus itself, other things about it. So we're right about that. We discussed early on that the vaccine probably would not cause sterility, meaning you could still probably get infected, but you would not get as sick. And almost overwhelming evidence suggests that that is the case, that you can get sick, not very often. You're generally protected from getting infection at this point, soon after you've been vaccinated, when you have the strongest immunity, but that it can happen in probably people who are either immunocompromised or for whatever reason the virus is not as effective. Not sure. But clearly it can happen. But we see overwhelmingly that the people who do manage to get infected don't get that sick, which is exactly what you'd hope for. So I think these are important things to recognize because you're going to get SARS-CoV-2. It's going to be around for the rest of your life, and you're going to be exposed to it multiple times throughout your life, no matter what measures you take to try and avoid it. Outside of living in a cave all by yourself for the rest of your life, I guess without any animals that can transmit it as well, which is not a realistic way to live life, obviously. So it's endemic. It will be around forever. Vaccine immunity, and I would say natural immunity almost for sure similarly, will not be sterility, which means you still can get infected. It probably means that you're generally protected from severe disease, whether you've been naturally infected and then developed immunity, or whether you use vaccine immunity, which seems to be as good or maybe not quite as good, but about the same as natural immunity. It's kind of hard. The studies say about the same. Either way, they both seem to be effective at immunity. They both seem to convey long-term immunity, which is what you'd hope, which again is what prevents severe disease, that your body mounts a defense before it becomes a huge systemic problem in your body. And so that's a win for science. It's a win for our immune systems. However you want to look at it, it's a win. The other thing we said, because it's endemic and because there's going to be breakthrough infections, and now we have animal reservoirs, you absolutely 100% will be faced with this virus. You may think, I'm going to avoid people, I'm going to wear a mask, I'm going to do certain things to avoid. You are going to get infected, and probably multiple times throughout your life. And you just need to be comfortable with that. So if you're someone who thinks, well, I'll just get natural immunity, fine. That's your choice. I don't particularly care at this point how you decide to get immunity, whether you use a vaccine or get natural immunity. But just know that you will get SARS-CoV-2. And if you don't have vaccine immunity, the chance of you getting really sick is much, much higher than obviously if you had a vaccine and then got sick from SARS-CoV-2. You're much less likely to get really sick if you've had the vaccine first. Again, this is your choice. Don't care. You're an adult. There's plenty of vaccine around. We don't need to worry about it. Nice that the air conditioning ended for us. So that's important to recognize too. So then we have to look at what's going on with the Delta variant. Everyone's talking about the Delta variant. I can't wait till the Epsilon variant comes and becomes the dominant variant strain that's even more transmissible than Delta, which certainly will happen at some point. Viruses generally get better at infecting people, and usually they tend to get over time, usually, not always, but usually, a little less virulent, means they cause less significant disease. I would hope that happened with SARS-CoV-2. We have no idea of knowing how that's going to really play out, but for sure we're going to get another strain that's going to be better at infecting people than this Delta variant, which just means that you're more likely to get what you're more likely to get anyway, right? You're still going to get SARS-CoV-2. So whatever measure you take, it's not going to work. And for any, I see people, public health officials, I see people, physicians who seem to think that there's some way to prevent us getting to no COVID or almost no COVID. I just don't know why you think that's possible. For one thing, the world has very low immunity levels at this point. If you look at natural immunity in this country, we're probably 30-35% of people in the United States have actually had SARS-CoV-2 and recovered, which is actually a lot of people considering it's only been a year and a half. Shows you how infectious this virus is. But that means there's 65% that didn't, right? If you look at the rest of the world, assuming they have the same numbers, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit more, a little bit less. They have to get to 100% immunity before you get to the point where you have long-term immunity outside of the new babies being born, right? I mean, those ones are not going to have any immunity naturally to the virus until they're exposed, get sick, get over it, and then they're okay. And fortunately, kids are generally okay. So we're a long ways from that happening. It's not going to happen anytime soon. The fact that we have vaccines in the United States moves us ahead a couple years to get a point where most people have had immunity to this virus. But places where the vaccine levels are low, like other countries, or like Africa or Asia, even parts of Europe, the South, they eventually will just get sick, and that's the way they're going to get their immunity. It doesn't matter to me. I think at this point it's pretty clear that in this country, the United States, we're not going to be without resources. We're not going to be without personal protective equipment in any area. We're not going to be short hospital beds or ICU beds really significantly. We're going to be able to get through this. We've gotten through really huge waves before where we had the entire population that was vulnerable. Now, most are not as vulnerable. So I think we need to just relax when it comes to overwhelming the healthcare system. I think it's unlikely. We will strain it. It'll be hard to get things through. Maybe you won't have to have all your elective procedures. You might have to cancel things for a little while or delay things. But as we've seen pretty much with every surge that happens with these in your community, it comes for a couple weeks, maybe like 6 weeks, and then it starts waning. It takes longer for the hospital to flush out, but essentially you're kind of stuck for a couple months, but then you get over it. And then you're going to have another wave or whatever until either that or more people get vaccinated. But even if everyone is vaccinated, you can see what's happening. There's still going to be breakthrough infections. We know that you're going to come into contact with it even when you're not in the public. You're going to come in contact with it through other animals. And you think, oh, I'm not around deer, which is a strange phenomenon that 60% of deer in the state of Michigan, where I live, are actually have shown signs of infection with SARS-CoV-2. I'm not quite sure how that is, and that's actually an interesting thought experiment. But there are mice. I mean, we're all around mice, or there are certain populations that are around mice more than others, and we like to think we're not around mice, but they're everywhere. If that's the case, then you're going to get exposure again from SARS-CoV-2. And so this is why you're going to keep getting it. And at certain times of the year, probably at some point, SARS-CoV-2 will become a seasonal illness, and just like most colds are, right? It tends to be when you're inside, stuck more like in winter, like the flu. But right now, of course, since there's such a naive population, meaning people who haven't had any immunity, everyone's got it. And so it doesn't show signs of being seasonal. But anyway, the point being, you're going to get it. You're going to have immunity. It'll be okay. And further restrictions or goals to get zero COVID or do other things, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why we seem intent on preventing all cases of COVID. Yes, it is true that children cannot get vaccinated at this point, the ones under 12 in the United States, because of our FDA. If they were able to, would that change anyone's plan? I don't get the impression that people would behave any different or have any different policies. I don't think that's why we're doing this, because if we look at our hospitals, they're not full of kids. There are some kids who get sick, and it is a tragedy. It is terrible. And probably the vaccine is going to be much safer than the risk for COVID, both of them being extremely unlikely long-term problems. I can't state, I don't think anyone can, exactly the true relative risks for both of them, but I think we know for sure that from a fatality standpoint, it is extremely unlikely that SARS-CoV-2 is going to cause your demise if you're a very young child or even a young adult. It does happen, and usually people who have strange COVID conditions or whatever, but I mean, there's on some level, we just have to accept the fact that there's a risk in life itself. I don't want to continue living the rest of my life behind a mask with social distancing or whatever you want to call it. I don't think that's living, and I don't know how long people are willing to keep going with this. It's shocking to me that it's lasted this long, that people want to reintroduce all these restrictions, especially when you look at the restrictions. I find it hard to believe that they actually work. It seems to be independent, the virus surges of whatever mask mandates are in place or lockdowns are in place. I think largely this is partly because they're animal vectors, meaning animals can give it to you. I think perhaps it's spread in the air much more than we think. And a mask mandate, let's be honest, the masks don't do a whole lot. If we were all wearing it 95s, I think that would be a different conversation, where now you have total protection. But I think it's probably unlikely and unreasonable to expect that the whole population will wear N95s. So, but I do think it will provide very good protection if you choose to protect yourself that way. So I think if you are so concerned about SARS-CoV-2, let's say you've been vaccinated and you're really worried about it, you have a few options. You can't make the entire world get vaccinated, because we've seen even if the whole world was vaccinated, there will still be breakthrough cases. You will still have a risk of getting SARS-CoV-2 and getting COVID-19. So it'll still happen. Also, the measures you'd have to go to force everyone to be vaccinated are increasingly draconian. What are you willing to do? Well, you can mandate it for people to work and make them starve, or you say, well, we're not starving, we're just preventing you from doing job X, Y, or Z. And I guess that's something you could do. You could say you can't ever get on an airplane. You can't get on a train. You can't get on a bus. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to, I don't know, a play or a concert or a football game. We can restrict what you're able to do. We're basically going to put you under house arrest. And if you don't do that, maybe we'll just arrest you. Maybe we'll have COVID prisons. And, this sounds totally crazy, but you look at Australia, I don't know, they're not that far from that, where they have basically people under house arrest with endless lockdowns that occur, and then they're gone for 6 weeks, and they come back in 6 weeks, where you're not allowed to leave your house for more than an hour at a time. These are things that are real concerns of mine. And I kept thinking, well, once we get the vaccine, once people realize that they have the ability to protect themselves and protect themselves from significant disease, we'll be okay, in the sense that we'll just accept the fact that there's some people who've chosen not to take protection. What are you willing to make people do? I love a discussion on this. I think it's concerning to me that people would go to extreme lengths to force people to do things in order to protect them from an incredibly small risk. Because once you've been vaccinated or had the infection and you have natural immunity, you're pretty protected from this. And if you're a kid, you're probably even safer than the elderly who have been vaccinated. So I struggle with with understanding what more people want, because we won't get zero COVID. We'll have endless lockdowns and mass mandates, and because what's going to happen, of course, is there will be a more virulent strain, like I said, Epsilon. What's next? Lambda, Theta, Eta, whatever, Omicron, Iota. Those will eventually happen because there's so many parts of the world that are years away from getting this natural immunity, this herd immunity, just naturally, because they're not getting vaccines because our country is throwing it away. But even if we gave it to them, it'd take a long time to sort of administer it, and whether they'd actually take the vaccine. But anyway, it's going to continue mutating. It's going to continue changing. Even if we all get vaccinated, it's still going to continue changing and mutating, whatever. So I don't know what the end game is for most people. I think most people aren't thinking, and I would ask you what your long-term thoughts are on this virus, because I think most people aren't looking more than like a couple weeks ahead. And we've been talking this for quite a while. And again, I'd recommend you go to the Paradox podcast, Paradocs. It's like you see on the bottom of the screen. The YouTube channel, Facebook, there's a LinkedIn, and kind of look at what we've been thinking about the whole time, because we were never talking about the immediate future. I mean, we were talking about the immediate, next week and the month, a couple months to come, but we were always looking at long term, where we're going, what's the likely outcome, and saying, well, SARS-CoV-2 is going to be around forever is not really a very thoughtful way of looking at the future, because it doesn't suggest how your policies are going to be shaped, how you're going to treat people, what kind of laws and what sort of ways you're going to live life. Are there things you're not going to allow anymore? Are you going to have, people have to carry their papers around with them all the time? I mean, what sort of measure are you going to go to? And those are important things to ask. And because we have to know where we're going to end up, we have to think about these things, because it will shape what we're doing right now, right? If we accept the things that are inevitable, then I think we can have a better, more rational discussion about what's happening next week. We seem to be living in a week at a time, and it is driving me insane, because everything's great. We're free of COVID, and then there's a new variant and there's a surge, and suddenly, oh my God, the whole world's crashing down. But this was entirely expected. I've talked about it. I know aren't thousands of people watching this, but I would hope that you'd share this with other people. This is not complicated stuff. I don't know why public health officials aren't talking about this. Is it because they think we can't handle the truth? Is it because they're not able to understand this? Are they not willing to look long term? I'm puzzled, because it has not been that hard for me to figure out by talking to a couple people. I don't know. I feel like there are people who either believe that SARS-CoV-2 is totally, imaginary, and I think you fail to look at the evidence all around you in the world. This is a really nasty virus. It's not the nastiest virus in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's pretty bad. But fortunately, I mean, in some ways, it affects the old. It doesn't affect children. It doesn't cause any permanent disability, as far as we can tell, like very commonly. It's not like polio, right? So, I mean, in many ways, it could be a whole lot worse. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need to sort of put things in perspective, and I struggle with what to say, because I feel like, just yelling into the wind, but we need to just relax. If you're really worried about it, and I recognize if you have a higher risk or lower risk tolerance than other people, that's okay. If you're worried about your kids, that's okay. There are alternatives for education. You can leave your kids at home. Which limits their exposure in general, so maybe they'll have less chance of getting it. You can wear N95s all the time. But I am almost certain the people walking around with masks on right now who are vaccinated are not wearing masks because they're worried that they have the virus and they're going to transmit to others. Now, maybe you'll tell people that that's why you're wearing it. I don't really believe that. I think the reason people are wearing them is because they don't want to get SARS-CoV-2, which is totally rational. I wouldn't want to either. I'm not looking forward to getting it when I get it, but I recognize at some point I will get it, just like I think I will probably have the flu again in my life, even though I get the flu vaccine. Flu vaccine doesn't work all the time. I'll never get other colds. I'll do my best to not get them. I'll wash my hands. I'm not going to hang out with people who are sneezing in my face. But the nature of life is that you interact with other people. Even if you're an introvert like me, you still are interacting with other people, going out and about in the community, buying stuff, going to dinner, the things that make life worth living. And so we can continue to accept this perpetual state of fear and hysteria and anxiety. Or you can just kind of sit back and think, SARS-CoV-2 is here forever. You're going to get it. If you've been vaccinated or you've had it, you're most likely going to be totally fine if you get it. Not 100%, but nothing's 100% in life. Your risk probably of getting in a car accident, I'm guessing at some point, is probably, and dying from it, is probably higher than a reinfection with SARS-CoV-2 with a vaccine if you're a reasonably healthy person. I don't know that anyone can, that sort of data is almost impossible to determine, but I know there's some things that are inherently very risky that we forget they are risky. So just relax. It's going to be okay. And don't impose your fears and your concerns on other people. Don't make everyone else's life miserable because you decide that you're going to live your life extra safe. Just live your life extra safe. That's okay. But no amount of forcing others to live safer is going to make you significantly a lot safer. Unless you're willing to go to such extreme measures that you're going to hold people down and vaccinate them. I mean, or throw them in jail, or prevent them from earning a living or going anywhere. It's I think, unfair for you to expect people to bow to your, I think, at this level, probably irrational level of fear that you have for the SARS-CoV-2. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, it's hard for me to sort of justify a lot of the actions that are taken by governments right now. I mean, their politicians are just doing what they think is popular, and I get it. That's what they do. But I think we need to, as physicians, as public health people, we need to lay out the facts. You're going to get it. You have two ways to get it. Either get it and get sick, or maybe not sick. You know, a lot of people are asymptomatic with SARS-CoV-2, but some people get really sick, or sick to go to the hospital, need oxygen, they get pneumonia, whatever. And then some people go to the ICU and die. It happens. Or you can get vaccinated, in which case your chance of all those things happening is a whole lot less. Now, can it happen even if you've been vaccinated? Sure. But you've taken a very small risk and made it incredibly smaller by getting this vaccine. So I think just get the vaccine. And if you choose not to, that's fine. We shouldn't force people to do things they don't want, but they should understand the risks that are involved. And I think at this point, everyone pretty much does. The FDA is going to get rid of the emergency authorization, which I think is probably not going to change a whole lot of people who are hesitant to get the vaccine. There aren't that many people who've been waiting around to see if the vaccine is safe from the FDA. I find it hard to believe. The only difference is that companies will feel more comfortable mandating people get the vaccine, in which case more people get vaccinated, but it's not going to totally change the problem, as we discussed already earlier in this video. So thank you for listening to my rant, my raving. I hope you found this helpful. Please share it with your friends, tag them in it, make sure they listen to this message. It's one I think we should all listen to. I think we should all understand. It's all going to be okay. I don't know. I wish I could be more convincing. Hopefully that's convincing enough for everyone, and that you go out and just live your life, be free of anxiety, free of stress, and enjoy each other. I miss seeing faces, and I work in the healthcare system, so in a hospital, I've new people who work with me. I haven't seen their face for like a year and a half. It really takes away a lot of life. And yes, it's a small price to pay, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, if we're going to be honest, that surgical mask is not going to do a whole lot. It does some, but it's not going to do much to prevent the spread of the disease. I think we've seen that pretty much when it comes to mask mandates anywhere in the country. It doesn't seem to have much effect. So I don't know. I know if someone passes gas, you're still going to smell it whether you're wearing a surgical mask or not. Now, an N95, you don't. So there you can see that absolutely from an aerosol standpoint, those work. But when it comes to normal aerosolized things, surgical masks, cloth masks, those things, it might buy you a couple minutes in a room. Maybe if you're passing someone, you might get by without getting infected. Maybe you get a little bit lower viral load. I don't know. But I think on the margins, it's not going to cause a significant difference. It's not going to cause enough of a difference that it's going to make a significant impact in the spread of disease. But those are my 2 cents. I don't know. Can't prove that one way or the other. But I think the science is not overwhelmingly in any direction. So thanks again. Listen to Paradox. Check it out on any podcast player. Go to YouTube, like this on Facebook, tag your friends, share it, and live life well. Thanks.